What do recent changes in the beef sector mean for the future of Irish farming, and how can farmers maximise current beef prices while making the most of our world-class grass-based systems? Join us at the Teagasc Beef Open Day, sponsored by FBD Insurance, at Teagasc Grange, Wednesday, July 1st from 9 a.m. See live animal, grassland and facilities demonstrations and hear the latest insights shaping the future of beef farming. Beef 2026, a key event for everyone in the beef sector. Wednesday, July 1st at Teagasc Grange, County Meath. Don't miss it.
We're very good at buying, bags of fertilizer, and we know exactly what's in that bag. And yet, look out the back of the shed there. You have a big tank of slurry there that is liquid gold. It's like if you put a monetary figure on it, you're talking, particularly on beef farms, the slurry is very good at it. You could have 9 units of nitrogen in 1,000 gallons. You could have 5 phosphorus, and you could have 30 potassium. Probably even higher than that actually on beef farms with the type of feeding that's done. So it's worth a lot of money. We don't put the value on it enough. Sometimes we see it as being, it gets into the springtime and the winter might be long and we're trying to get it out at the wrong time. But every time that you put out slurry at the wrong time, it's costing you money.
Hello and welcome to the Beef Edge, the Teagasc Beef Podcast, for all your latest news, information and advice for the Irish beef farmers. I'm Cathal Somers, and on this week's episode, I'm joined by Teagasc ASSAP Programme Manager Cathal Somers and Teagasc Specialist Mark Plunkett to get an update on line, soil fertility and impact it can have on water quality, production and profitability, and the upcoming National Beef Open Day Beef 2026 taking place on the 1st of July in Teagasc Grange. Cathal, water quality continues to be a major focus for farmers. What are the main pressures affecting water quality on beef farms, and where can farmers make the biggest difference?
We've recently had the EPA indicators report out, so it's as the reports highlighted, we have done some good work, but there's a lot more work to do. Look, for beef farms, I suppose there's a couple of things that go at straight away. Some very, very low hanging fruit. The first thing I would always say to people is, we kind of break it down to 3 things: the farmyard, we look at land management, and we look at nutrient management planning. They're the 3 big things to look at. The main nutrients of concern that we're worried about on farms at the moment is nitrogen. Obviously is a big one. A lot of people, particularly in the south to the southeast of the country, will be aware of that. But also phosphorus and sediment is a big issue across the country, and also pesticides as well. And not just pesticides, but sheep dip I'd include there in that, or any sort of dips that we include there as well. So they're the kind of main sources, Catherine. There's a lot of things we could do. Particularly starting in the farmyard and just making sure that our core compliances are right, that we're effectively looking after our slurry, our farmer manures, that we're looking after the clean water that hits the yard, and we're making sure that doesn't become soil and hitting a drain beside the yard, or maybe a pipe connected somewhere it shouldn't go. Those type of things, even simple things as getting your drains and your downpipes. They're non-compliances, and just those simple things that they don't take too long to fix, but can go a long way to improving your farmyard. Out on the land, and we'll talk about more detail, I'm sure, later on, is, the fertility piece and the line piece is vitally important, particularly for nitrogen loss. It's a really core principle of trying to reduce your nitrogen losses, trying to get that piece right, I suppose, and just putting enough nutrient on so that you give enough that the plant needs. And then again, on the land management side, it's all about breaking the pathways. So when water falls from the sky, when it hits land, it has to go somewhere. So it'll find a river or drain somewhere. And if there's something, a nutrient or a slurry or soil that it can bring to the river with it, we have to try and stop that and reduce that loss to the rivers.
That's great, Cathal. And the Better Farming for Water campaign, that's highlighting 8 key actions. Can you outline some of those, or what's most important from those actions for beef farmers?
Yeah, look, so when we're putting the campaign together, obviously we're trying to look at some of the top priorities we should go after, and we do have 8 actions. We put them down, and we're going across the country. We have, I suppose, catchment coordinators that are running this program, and it's a collaborated program actually, where there's a lot of KT and training and advisory going along, and we're focused on the 3 areas that I mentioned: the nutrient management, the farmyard, and the land management. But on the nutrient management side, it's basically going after reducing surplus nitrogen. So trying to reduce the amount of chemical nitrogen we're putting on, but also trying to better use organic manure, so slurries and farmer manure, to replace that nitrogen to still grow our crops. And the other thing we're going after, obviously, is pH. Mark will talk more about pH in a minute, but we're not doing enough on our pH. It's a simple, cheap, effective measure to help improve our nutrition on our farms. We have to go after that as well. And then the simple thing of just putting the fertilizer out at the right time and in the right place, the place that needs it, and avoiding putting it out in times where, the soil temperature is too low, that we're not getting growth, or that there's not enough light that we'll get growth, particularly in the shoulders and the year in the winter. And obviously in the right place where it needs it. What we don't want is to be overloading things like phosphorus too high in areas. There's a certain target we go for the type of crop you're growing. On the farmer management side, slurry storage is the big one. There has been a lot of surveys over the last little while about slurry storage. Some people are doing very, very well, but we know there's room for maneuver on that and room for improvement. So we have to make sure we have enough slurry, that the slurry doesn't force us to go out at the wrong time, that we have adequate storage, that we can decide when the slurry goes out and get best bang for your buck from that. And the last one then, as I said, is just making sure that stuff going off the yard doesn't hit drains. We have to start looking at drains as being the same as a river. If it hits a drain, that nutrient will hit the river. So we have to manage our farms in a way where we keep them as clean as possible, and divert that water into tanks if it needs to be. On the land management side on beef farms, a lot of beef farmers are doing really good on this, but look, the simple thing of keeping the cattle out of the river, that'll go a long, long way. We have options there now for solar pumps and nose pumps there, and fencing off water courses, and a nice riparian margin between the fence and the water course as well. It would go that goes a long way. We have a couple of types. You can run them along the water course, or we can put them where there's flow paths, spatially targeted riparian margins. But these are just vegetated margins, just to, if there is nutrient coming along in water, that it stops it. And the last thing, if any of your clients or your listeners here may be growing some spring or winter barley or wheat or whatever like that, just making sure that those crops have green cover over the winter time as well. A catch crop is very, very good in reduces those losses as well.
And farmers can obtain some different grants as well, Cathal, for some of those measures that you've outlined, and they'll probably hear more at that at the Beef 2026 Open Day.
Yeah, there's lots of opportunity between ourselves and the ASSAP program and the Waters EAP we have, and a lot of your listeners are probably involved in that already, and also Acres and even TAMS has a lot of different things that people can use. There's lots of options out there. I suppose the big thing is just identifying what is the problem on your farm, and then looking for a solution, and then seeing is there an associated grant to help support farmers to get that over the line.
That's great, Cathal. Mark, Cathal mentioned there the importance of increasing the pH of the soil, and we've seen on farms, many farmers have invested heavily in lime over the last number of years. What impact is that having, or what further gains are possible from improving soil fertility?
Yeah, look, I suppose leading on from Cathal there, Catherine, like soil fertility is key in that whole area of nutrient efficiency and getting more out of the nitrogen. Like I suppose the game has changed in that now fertilizer is getting more expensive, and also water quality is we're trying to reduce the loss of nutrients to water and trying to retain more nitrogen in the soil. And I suppose one of the key things there is soil pH. That I suppose one of the things that I'm coming across out there on beef farms is that we have a large proportion of the soils that are tested annually. Something like 64% of our soils are suboptimal for soil pH. Like we aim for a pH of 6.3 to 6.5 on mineral soils. And I suppose if we think about nitrogen, like, you know what I mean? Like maybe when I mention nitrogen, maybe people think about bag nitrogen, but there is other sources of nitrogen on farm. Like, for example, our soils can supply anywhere from 70 to up to maybe 250 kilos of nitrogen from mineralization there on an annual basis. So by having your pH right, the bugs, the bacteria, the earthworms will make more of that organic nitrogen, or they'll mineralize more nitrogen on an annual basis by having the pH right. They will work for you and they will grow grass, from that increase in that available nitrogen in the soil. I suppose the other area is around slurry, making best use of the organic manures, your cattle slurry, your farmyard manures, and again, having the pH in that sweet spot. You increase the utilization of those nutrients, helping to reduce our dependence on bag nitrogen. Now, we need bag nitrogen, you know what I mean, in terms of driving, grass-based systems, but we must use that nitrogen as efficiently as possible. And again, having your pH in that optimum zone, you increase the efficiency of the nitrogen, like it's probably getting the pH right is probably the big lifter in terms of improving that NUE. Like we can go from about a 35% nitrogen efficiency up to a 51% by getting the pH right alone. And then by optimizing the P and the K in the soil, we can go to about 65% N use efficiency. So in effect, from going from suboptimal soil fertility to optimal soil fertility, we can double the efficiency of the nitrogen that's in our soils that we apply in our organic manures and our fertilizers. And I suppose the final piece of the nitrogen piece then, Catherine, is, by having the pH right and having the P's and K's right, we have the opportunity for clover or red clover. So again, in order, in terms of our reducing our dependence on chemical nitrogen, or getting the establishment and the productivity of those clovers, pH is central, in our mineral soils.
And you touched there, Mark, on soil health, and that's something that farmers are hearing more and more about. When you visit a beef farm, what are the main soil health issues that you're seeing, or how can farmers assess the health of their own soil?
Soil health is a three-legged stool in terms of soil structure. So again, by going out with a spade, taking out a cube of soil and examining the soil, you're taking out a sort of a 20 centimeter cube of soil. You're looking at things like, the shape and the size of the beds in the soil. Also things, you're looking for a compacted layer, the color of the soil, is it a healthy color, and also the level of rooting. So that can tell you a lot about the soil structure. Also the soil biology. So again, something as simple as counting the earthworms. So when you take out that cube of soil, if you have somewhere between 10 to 15 earthworms, it's generally a good indicator of soil health. And I say the other big thing that I've touched on there is around the whole area of the soil chemistry or the soil testing around having the P's and K's right, is essential, or it's the foundation in terms of, improving soil health in terms of the structure, the biology, and its nutrient supply. And the end game is, we're trying to use the nutrients as efficiently as possible and having less nutrients either going down into the water or up into the air, as in terms of climate.
That's great, Mark. And something you touched on there, the slurry is often described as a very valuable fertiliser, and particularly from, something free that's available on farm. Cathal, how can farmers maximise the nutrient value of slurry and reduce losses, particularly for the environment? And, you mentioned earlier the impact that slurry can have on water quality.
Yeah, Catherine, this is a big one, right? And a simple thing to do, but maybe not as many farmers we like would do it, is just go out there and test your slurry, see what's actually in it, because we're very good at buying, bags of fertilizer, and we know exactly what's in that bag. And yet, look out the back of the shed there, you have a big tank of slurry there that is liquid gold. It's like, if you put a monetary figure on it, you're talking, particularly on beef farms, the slurry is very good at it. You could have 9 units of nitrogen in 1,000 gallons. You could have 5 phosphorus, and you could have 30 potassium, probably even higher than that actually on beef farms with the type of feeding that's done. So if you monetize that, it's worth a lot of money. I suppose we don't put the value on it enough. Sometimes we see it as being, it gets into the springtime and the winter might be long and we're trying to get it out at the wrong time. But every time that you put out slurry at the wrong time, it's costing you money, and potential losses then to water or even atmosphere then at that stage as well. So I think we really need to start looking at the slurry in our tanks as being the very same as the chemical in our bag. Look at it the same way. It's worth the same value, and applying it correctly. There's one thing I would often see on clover days, actually, when we talk about clover, and if you put a clover in, you're trying to reduce the amount of chemical nitrogen. And often if a farmer might ask how much nitrogen was put on that clover sward, and the farmer might say, well, actually zero nitrogen was put on that. We put zero nitrogen on, but they never account for the slurry that goes on. So there is nutrient value in slurry, and it is a really important value. So we have to think of it in that way. So just as simple as that, you can do a hydrometer test, Catherine. That's a very simple test to do, and advisors often demonstrate it or send it into the local lab and just see what's in your tank, how much you have, and then build it into your nutrient management plan, as Mark was talking. You have your soil samples, you have your nutrient management plan, you know what your crop requirements are, and just tag in your slurry then once you know what the nutrient value of it is.
I suppose just to build maybe on what Cathal has covered excellently there. Like if you take a cut of silage, Catherine, first cut of silage, like 3,000 gallons can supply approximately 30% of of that crop's nitrogen requirement. Like if you take 3,000 gallons, it will be 27 units or 9 units of available nitrogen. So as Cathal is saying, get it tested, see what's in it, and then make the adjustment. Make that saving, put money back in your pocket in terms of reducing your chemical nitrogen requirement on that crop of silage. And ideally, it should go back to the silage ground. There's a big benefit there in terms of getting the organic matter or the carbon back to feed the biology, to feed the soil, and maintain, making good quality silage in that area of the farm.
And particularly, Mark, in relation to clover, the Cathal mentioned there, the environmental impact that can have, and from a grassland management point of view, and improving farm performance and also reducing the nitrogen. That's having a huge impact at farm level, and also the research coming from Teagasc Grange.
Absolutely, it's probably a lever that we can push, you know what I mean. As you rightly said, in terms of the animal, in terms of animal performance, animal health, better graze outs, and also then there's a savings there around chemical nitrogen, reducing our carbon footprint, reducing emissions. That clover, we're getting into the time of the year now where clover is starting to take off in paddocks and swards, and it's now time to pull back on nitrogen and let the clover take over and start supplying nitrogen, you know what I mean, on those parts of the farm.
Just to add to that as well, like I suppose we're kind of talking about moderately to heavier stock farms at the moment, but like I could give you lots of examples of very good beef farmers who are probably spreading around the 155 kilograms nitrogen per hectare, but they're growing, with good fertility and good clover in the swards. Like Mark said, they're cutting back to almost zero round of chemical nitrogen at this stage, and they're growing, 12 and 13 tons of grass, which is very good. It just goes to show if you do the thing right, you can save money. Number one, you can cut back in your chemical nitrogen, and you can still grow the amount of grass that your animals need.
That's great, Cathal, particularly from, the evidence that you mentioned there, the environmental improvements. They're also having a huge impact on the sustainability of the farm and also the production and profitability.
Hugely, and it goes right back to what Mark was mentioning earlier on. If you want to be profitable, to be honest with you, profitability and water quality and gas emissions, it actually all comes in together, particularly on the nitrogen side of the house. A lot of stuff that Mark and I are talking about now are going to prove they'll reduce losses, but they're also going to save money in their pocket. We've said it over and over again, but it goes back to the very basic that we talked about at the start. If you don't have lime correct in your system, a lot of things that we're talking about don't work really well. Clover doesn't really work well if your pH is not correct. Your nitrogen use efficiency doesn't work very well. And the problem with not having the right fertility and the right pH is if you don't have that correct for the amount of grass you're trying to grow, obviously, you end up having to put more nitrogen on it to camouflage the problem with fertility. And that's what we don't want to have happen. We want to have our fertility correct, and then that allows you to reduce on the chemical nitrogen. And the impact of that then is less nutrient going to river. That means going forward, less regulation on us, cleaner water, and the benefits of, I suppose, not having to go up to the co-op and buy more nitrogen on top of it as well. So let a good management and a good system do the work for you rather than increasing the chemical in the bag.
And lime is forming the real cornerstone of the forage village for farmers visiting Beef 2026. What demonstrations or exhibits should farmers make an effort to see on the day at Grange on the 1st of July?
I say, yeah, we're putting a big effort into lime this year at Grange. There'll be a big demonstration there, Catherine, in terms of the type of lime, how much lime, what's the benefit in terms of the extra grass production, and most importantly, what's the extra profit or how much extra money can it put in your pocket. So, yeah, there will be a big focus on lime on the 1st of July in Grange to demonstrate the benefits of getting your pH right to drive the efficient use of nitrogen on beef farms.
Yeah, and on our side there, Catch, as well, on the water quality side. So we'll be early enough in the stops and encourage people to come over to us. We have a nice demo set up where we're going to be looking at, we'll have a bit of soil pit there, and we're just going to be chatting to farmers about similar to enough what we're talking about here today, how to best get nutrients on, grow the grass that you need and not loss. So we're going to be looking, showing farmers how nutrient moves through soil, where it's taken up by the grass, how we pull it out. Maybe we're going to look at some bit of compaction there as well, just to identify to help farmers, I suppose, improve their soils a bit, even when it goes down beyond the plough layer. what happens after that, and where the nutrients can go, and how we can counteract that, I suppose, to keep it in the grass, getting back into our animal. The other thing we'll be doing is we'll be looking at some measures there as well that farmers can do, particularly on dry land and heavier land, actually. And then the last thing that we'll have is a couple of catchment scientists there, and they'll be able to show farmers some samples from the local river of the invertebrates, which kind of show, how good or bad the river is in, the condition it's in, how healthy the river is. And also we have someone from the fisheries there as well that will hopefully have some examples of fish that are in the river, and you'll be able to see the different types of fish that are in the river. We'll have a couple of tanks there as well. But the best opportunity you'll have, and I'd really encourage people to come over, we're going to have a lot of ASSAP advisors there and catchment scientists. It's a really, really good opportunity to get time with them, to have a chat with them, and get as much information as you can out of them. Their sole job is to help people, support farmers to reduce losses from their farms. So it's a really good opportunity to have a chat with those advisors.
That's great, Cathal and Mark. A really interesting lineup of various demonstrations and interactive workshops there for farmers to see at the Forage Village at Beef 2026 on the 1st of July at Teagasc Grange. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Catherine.
Further details are available on the Teagasc website at www.teagasc.ie. That's all for this week's episode, and my thanks to Cathal and Mark for joining me on the show. You can catch up on all other shows and interviews from the Beef Edge podcast on the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie, or you can listen on Apple as well as Spotify. Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe so you never miss a show. For all other updates from our beef programme, keep an eye on our Twitter and Facebook pages. Until next time, I'm Catherine Egan, and thanks for listening.